You were given a calfskin wallet on your birthday. You have a little boy and he shows you his butterfly collection, including his killing jar. You're in a desert walking along in the sand, when all of a sudden you look down and you see a tortoise. It's walking towards you. You reach down, you flip the tortoise onto its back. The tortoise lays on its back, its belly baking in the hot sun, beating its legs, trying to flip itself over, but it can't, not without your help. But you're not helping. Why is that? But I don't know. Does it owe me money? Pass. You may now enter the website. These capture tests are really getting out of hand. Welcome back to Movie Punch, where we punch movies so you don't have to. Today we're looking at the sci-fi pinnacle, Blade Runner. Directed by Ridley Scott, written by Hampton Fancher and David Peoples, based on the novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. I feel like I really need to prove myself today because, unlike some of the other movies that I've covered, this one's really divisive. On the one hand, there are those people that think this is a masterpiece and one of the greatest science fiction movies ever made. The correct opinion. And on the other hand, there are people that find this movie interminably dull and don't understand the hype. And I understand that opinion, really I do. But you're wrong. Bold words? Perhaps. Let's see if I can back them up. Today we're asking, Blade Runner, is it really that good? Let's punch it. Speaking of dystopia, Wendy, what the hell are you wearing? You look like an accountant at a Mad Max convention. You're prepping for the AI apocalypse? Right. Will there be a lot of need for fingerless gloves in the robot-controlled future? I wanted to start here, because I feel like, unlike a lot of other movies where you're coming for the story or the characters, with Blade Runner, you're really coming for the tone, which sounds crazy, but when you let it wash over you, it's almost visceral. I think this is one of the greatest adaptations of all time, and that's mostly down to how it uses cinematic language to create the exact feeling that you get when reading the book. In Dick's novel, honestly in a lot of his novels, the sense of dystopia drips off the page. You feel caught up in this futuristic world where technology is developed but stagnated, where everyone has moved on to something different today, but then just kind of given up. Dystopian novels are all about evoking a future where we didn't make the best choices, and while we might have progressed in some sense, society is worse off than now. Blade Runner has a lot of cool visuals and tech, but it looks like a world that you wouldn't want to live in. I understand a movie needs more than world building alone, but it's so rare for a sci-fi movie to feel this believable. Every scene is allowed to breathe, and you just absorb them. At least you do if you watch a cut without the voiceover. We'll get to that. Wendy, are those weapons? What does going on the offensive mean exactly? Right, Wendy has dubbed herself a Blade Runner. I think it might be bitterness after she fell for that AI bot scam. She didn't lose any money, it just told her that she was a bit much and needed a break. Okay, let's talk Harrison Ford. I feel like after Star Wars, he could have easily taken this character in a different direction, more charming, more likeable, but he pitches it perfectly. The story of Blade Runner to me is about finding out that the detective isn't the good guy, but Deckard works so well as a character because he has all of the tropes we expect to find in a character that we want to root for. Tragic backstory, pain-in-the-ass bosses, meddling corporate interests. But then we never see him as a particularly good person. He does things that aren't good because he's flawed. And he's never been introspective enough to think about whether what he's doing is actually a good thing, which mirrors living in a society that hasn't been introspective enough to realise it's heading in a bad direction. Which brings us neatly to our antagonist, the heart of the whole movie. Rutger Hauer is one of those actors that should have been more famous than he was. We should have this great backlog of classic movies with him starring. And yeah, I feel like his career never took off the way it should have done. His performance here is incredible, and his largely ad-libbed tears and raid scene is one of the best moments in movie history. I couldn't give him MVP here, as you'll see in a minute, but his balance between violent and compassionate is masterful. I think this speaks to a lot of people's problem with this movie, though, because they were expecting sci-fi action, and instead what they got was philosophical musing on the nature of what it means to be human.
I'm too high for this shit.
Hand right and pull back. Stop. Hands 34 to 46. Give me a hard copy right there.
Welcome back. Just me here now. Wendy has vacated the studio to go on patrol with a Nerf gun and a hockey stick. Let's keep going. Okay, let's talk Ridley Scott. The man has a history of clashing with studios over cuts, and nowhere is this more obvious than Blade Runner. The initial test screenings for this movie were poor, so the studio took some scenes out, put some scenes in, trying to make the movie more palatable for general audiences. It did not work. The movie still bombed. Then later, once people heard that there was potentially a better version of this movie out there, the studio decided to release a director's cut with some of the changes reversed. Only they didn't involve Ridley Scott in this, so he didn't sign off on it, and then later he decided to come back and do his own director's cut. But for some reason, that didn't work out, so then he came back and did another version. I think there's something ridiculous like 7 cuts of this movie available, but now that time has passed, everyone seems to agree that the final cut is the best version, and it's what's usually available on Blu-ray or streaming. So what's the difference? Well, it cuts out the happy ending that the studio tacked on, it cuts out the voiceover narration the studio added to help audiences understand things, and it adds some scenes to suggest Deckard may not be human. Overall, I think this is the best version of the movie. The ending in the elevator is better, and while the unicorn scenes actually kind of undermine the whole point of the movie, I can see what Scott was going for, and I kind of like the added ambiguity. The voiceover is interesting though. I think the movie is actually better without it, especially as Ford did an intentionally bad job because he really didn't want it to go into the movie. But that said, on a first viewing, I think it's kind of helpful. It adds to the film noir vibe and makes everything a little clearer. So, if you haven't seen Blade Runner before, which cut should you watch?
Who gives a
Coin. What's that, Wendy? You've seen a robot nearby. What does it look like? Black blocky and with wheels? Well, what? She's gone. Be right back. I need to make sure she's not challenging the neighbour's Renault Clio to a duel. Well, I didn't see the start of the robot apocalypse, but I did see Wendy kick the shit out of a wheelie bin, so that's something. Let's move on. The MVP here could only be that Vangelis score. I feel like there's a lot of movies out there with great scores that are really enjoyable, but here I'm honestly not sure if the movie still works with a traditional score. The music in this movie is the glue that holds it all together. Earlier I talked about how this movie nails the tone, and I think the score is a big part of that. If I was watching a movie with the same pacing that we have here without that score, I could be bored, but instead I'm relishing every scene. I really love Blade Runner 2049, and when that movie came out, a lot of people said that it was better than the original. I see where they're coming from, but the problem is, it doesn't have Vangelis. Sounds like Wendy is back. Let's wrap things up before things get any crazier. So, is Blade Runner really that good? I think so, but as always, feel free to leave me a comment telling me how wrong I am. I'd be interested to know, if you don't like this movie, how many times have you seen it? The first time I watched it, I didn't quite get it, but it got under my skin. And then the second time round, I loved it. So basically what I'm saying is, if you don't love this movie, you're not trying hard enough. What's that? You've seen a whole pack of them? Right, well, is that a flamethrower? Sorry, I'm going to have to go check on this. I'll be right back. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Wheelie bins on fire on a hard shoulder by the Golden Lion. I've watched the neck sweat of a middle-aged woman glitter in the darkness by a security gate. All those moments will be lost in time as I drink to erase them from my memory. Time to like and subscribe.